to put our history in our present mind. As you may know, the history of this great county started with racial covenants. Legal documents that said you shall not sell this property to anyone who is non-Caucasian. In addition, these documents required that if there were persons who were non-Caucasian in these homes, the servitude, that they could not stay for an extended time. And when these covenants were broken, the owners of these property, like Mr. Levitt, would take these individuals to court. And so what we have here in this example, please come forward, young lady, thank you. I want to give a thank you to our interns, is actually an example of a lease. People think that it was all deeds, but at first they started with leases. And if you look at the other page, the title page of this lease, there it is. It says right here that these premises are purposed for private dwelling, and they should not be sold to individuals who are non-Caucasian. And so in this important time in our country, in our community, rather than staying silent, I want to do something about it. And I want to thank Legislator Drucker, an extraordinary real estate attorney. And we talk about the law, we were both real estate attorneys, and we talked about how in our years of practice we've seen here and there a racial covenant, or maybe a covenant that said that you should not sell to Jewish people. And it's important, rather than just taking down our statues or burning things down, that we preserve our history and we learn from it. This bill is about education. We must educate ourselves and learn and unlearn what divides us and what unites us, because at the end of the day, we're all the same. And so when we have this opportunity through this legislation to have an evidence-based research opportunity for our young people, where they can actually see legal documents like this court case or like this lease or like a deed that says you can't sell this property to anyone who's non-Caucasian, I think that's a learning moment for anyone or for our community. And so we're asking for, in this legislation, we're asking for the Human Rights Commission to issue a request for proposals directed to educational institutions, nonprofit institutions, for the development of an electronic database of racially restrictive covenants. The purpose of the RFP is to organize a team of volunteers capable of identifying and transcribing racially restrictive covenants and additional data related to residential property deeds. The team of volunteers shall include educators, historians. I'm so thankful to have great interest in this project from Lloyd College, who's present, and also Delphi University. And I have a statement from a professor at Delphi who could not be here today, but I will read her statement. And so the cost will be minimal for the county. Yes, there are fiscal realities, but the cost will be minimal for the county, because in essence, there are good people like Michael, who's here from Levittown, who want to step up and say, hey, you know what, that's not me, I had nothing to do with it, but let's learn from each other. And so the data collected by the team of volunteers would include the following: the location of the property, the applicable town, a digital copy of the deed. After the data is collected, it will be uploaded and searchable in an electronic database accessible to the public that displays racially restrictive covenants and related data. It's not just about these covenants, ladies and gentlemen. It's also about the bank policies that encourage loans for some people and discourage loans for other people. And once we take that map and see where these covenants were, again, they're not enforceable anymore. But when we see where they were and we overlay with the map of how our county looks together today, we're going to see that, wait, how is this possible? These communities have remained, only Caucasian for so long. It's not an opportunity to point the finger, because of course when you point the finger back at yourself. It's an opportunity for us to learn from each other. And so I want to thank everyone who's really stepped up. A lot of people from Levittown, people from all across this great county, who said, you know what, I don't like what I see on TV, and that's not my community, and I want to show the real side of our community. And so I want to thank everyone who's expressed an interest in this opportunity. I have much more to say, but really I want to share the microphone with my colleagues, and I want to allow Mr. Arnold Drucker to come forward and speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carrié. I'm extremely proud to be a co-sponsor of this important legislation with my friend and colleague, Legislator Solages. Why is it important? It is important because the moment is now to exhaust every opportunity, travel every avenue, and explore every idea to eradicate racism and inherent bias on Long Island, here in Nassau County, and everywhere it exists. Last year, Newsday's award-winning Long Island Divided expose chronicled the subtle and not so subtle efforts by real estate agents and brokers to perpetuate the racially segregated landscape of Long Island by steering buyers to and away from certain communities and expose the inherent and pervasive institutionalized racism that has characterized Long Island for the past 75 years since the end of World War II. Those of us who have lived here on Long Island for decades know that this segregation exists and has existed with impunity. The purpose of this legislation is to further probe the genesis of this racial and religious divide right here in Nassau County by shining a light on those neighborhoods where it started with restrictive covenants, in deeds and leases, seeking to prevent black and brown people from buying or renting houses in those communities. Although these restrictive covenants have been held to be legally unenforceable by the courts in New York, it is important to continue to give a historical reference and perspective to the inherent racial divide and build upon Newsday's series of documenting the indisputable facts which precipitated the abject segregation. The goal is to raise the consciousness by educating our residents and inspiring them to have the important conversations with their children, their families, their friends, and their colleagues on how we got here and how we are now in a better position to confront racism here on Long Island. By doing so, we are empowering ourselves to promulgate new laws and policies that create more effective tools for dismantling and eradicating institutional and systemic racism here in Nassau County and Long Island. Education yields knowledge. Knowledge yields power. The power to effectuate enduring change in our society. Our next speaker is someone who has played and continues... Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's hear from Arnie Drucker. Next, I would like to bring to the podium Dr. Lisa Newland, Director of the Social Work Program Department at... You can come forward here. Dr. Newland? No? Okay, fine. Yes. Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Newland. Thank you. Well, College.
Well, thank you so much for inviting us to participate and support in this important project. Am I okay? Put it up some more? Sorry. Okay. Thank you again, Legislator Solages and Legislator Drucker, for allowing us to participate. Beloit College is pleased to participate today and to lend our support to this important resolution being presented. We are committed to transformational education, and we know that it promotes positive social change. Beloit has externally focused programs, including our Sustainability Institute and our Energia Partnership, which research and develop programs on many social issues in Long Island, in addition to our curriculum with their academic departments that focus on social change. As an institution, we recognize the difficult historical legacy of racial segregation in housing, education, and the impact of those inequalities. The experience from our external programs, research with our faculty and students, and educational forums that are held at the college on racism contribute to the capacity for our college to establish this support for this initiative. The call to support this initiative to establish a database of racially restrictive covenants within property deeds of Nassau County is timely and important to understanding this aspect of Long Island's history. The college is supportive in engaging in this important research in order to expand the opportunity for learning for our students and the public at large. And lastly, Beloit College is prepared to participate in this project, which intends to make clear to Long Islanders how inequity was brought about by deliberate decisions and policies that cemented institutional racism in how we live, how we work, and how we educate our families. Providing a base of historical understanding for people of goodwill will help advance decisions and actions on how to best work together to eradicate racial injustice and make Long Island a better place for us all. Thank you for the opportunity to support.
Thank you very much, Dr. Newland. Again, the Newsday special, and again, it was one of the best pieces of journalism I read. It was truly an eye-opening expose, and it shined a light on what's happening here in Nassau County. And so the idea for this legislation came not recently, but really after reading that investigative report. And so I want to thank Newsday for the report, and this is, this is done in response. And I would also like to mention that, Legislator Drucker also sponsored legislation to address several issues amongst realtors in the real estate industry. We could talk about them more, but I would like to bring to the podium, her podium, Ms. Tessa Hulse, the CEO of the Long Island Board of Realtors. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Legislators, Solages, and Drucker, for allowing me to be here today. Unequal access to housing is both a symptom and a cause of other inequities. Inequities in the ability to build household wealth, in education, in healthcare, and finally life expectancies. The enduring patterns of segregation in housing, neighborhoods, and communities that we see year after year across the country were shaped by decades of public policy. The Long Island Board of Realtors strongly supports this bill and efforts to expose the connection between public policy-supported residential racism and Nassau's current housing patterns. We thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. The possibilities for this legislation are endless. This database can be used for training purposes with brokers. It can be used for educational purposes with students. It can be used for many other positive purposes. If you go to Barnes & Noble or any library, you see these nice books. And, one of the main, Mr. Rothstein, Dr. Rothstein, is an authority on this issue, provides an example of a legal document with a restrictive covenant here. I also would like to read a statement from Dr. Darling, Marsha Darling from Delphi University, who also have expressed interest in creating opportunities with their student body and their professors to study this information. Dr. Darling offered a statement, which I'll read just a brief part of it. It says, "My comments today are offered in support of the proposed legislation. In a cumulative manner, the racial exclusion created by federal, state, and local and private institutional policies and private discriminatory actions were pivotal in creating marginalization and economic stagnation that created the widespread inequalities of opportunity found in black communities across Long Island." Which brings us to the highly relevant, the relevancy of this bill. Clearly collecting and disseminating research on the prevalence of racially restrictive language in deeds would educate the public about matters many know very little about, and that is important. But the research findings would also assist those engaged in tackling the harmful manifestations of institutional structural racism that the late Manning Marable of Columbia University defined as resulting in the grossly unequal outcomes between racial groups on Long Island. I would like to thank, several leaders from our community, like Professor Nakensha Gilliam, a teacher at Elmont High School, and also a member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. They brought to my attention a racially motivated incident that occurred in Valley Stream. And when you think about racial covenants, you think about Levittown, but a person from Valley Stream here today told me that, on their deed, they recall about 20 years ago, there was a racially restrictive covenant. But I mentioned that incident in Valley Stream yesterday because this legislation addresses that. We would not be treating each other like aliens if we truly saw the humanity in each other. And we must understand why we're not living together. Because if we were living together, we wouldn't see these random incidents of hate that are really occupying the news stream and the media. The far majority of people in Nassau County are good people who believe in the equality of each other. And so I think my colleague would like to make an additional point.
Well, Legislator Solage is 100% correct, because what we have to do now, I said in my comments earlier about now is an opportunity now to keep building. You don't take a step and then you just stop for a while. There's momentum here because we are now in a prime position to address all of the issues of segregation, all of the issues of the racial divide that we have here in Long Island. This bill, coupled with other legislation that we can, will, and will do, focus on that. We have to try to bring people together, to break down the barriers that have existed here for so many decades. And this is what we're doing, because housing is really the groundbreaking and the common denominator. When you can overcome the segregation and discrimination in housing, and you allow people to live where they want to live, where they choose to live, not where they have to live, you then foster equality, equality in education, equality in healthcare, equality in wealth. And those are the things we're trying to do, and we continue to build day after day after day. The moment is now. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to open up the floor for questions, please.
No questions?
Yeah. Sorry, I have a question. Do you have any idea how many of these covenants exist? And was it only Levittown, or do you have evidence of it elsewhere?
I have a good faith belief that these restrictive covenants existed in communities beyond Levittown, Manhasset, Garden City, Valley Stream. But again, as an attorney, when someone retains me for buying a home, closing, I've researched title documents, and I've seen since being admitted to the bar since 2006, I've seen perhaps a handful of these. Mr. Drucker, who's also an attorney, has mentioned that he's seen a handful of them. But this is an opportunity to preserve this information.
And what does the language look like? What is the language of a restrictive covenant?
Similar to this lease, that's an example right here. The language basically says the tenant agrees not to permit the premises to be used or occupied by any other persons than members of the Caucasian race, but the employment and maintenance of other than Caucasian domestic servants shall be permitted.
And did this apply to, you said in the press release it also applied to Jews. Were there also Jewish covenants, anti-Jewish covenants?
Yes, to my understanding. But again, once we, expose and uncover these documents, we're going to find, I'm sure, a lot of other information. Bank policies that encourage loans in some communities and not other communities. And perhaps in the future, this can be used by banks to help encourage more loans in certain communities for more, middle-class families.
Legislator?
Yes. My mic on?
Yep.
So,
We're not hearing you.
sorry?
Can you turn it up?
Stand there. Thank you.
As a Jewish person, I can tell you, living here my entire life, there were communities. When my family I'm one of 4 children, and when my parents were thinking about moving to a larger house, we knew that there were certain neighborhoods where we were not allowed to go. I don't want to start naming all those communities, but there were quite a few. Whether they existed in deed covenants, I am not sure. But it was obvious, it was institutionalized, it was systematic and systemic that a Jewish person would not be able, real estate brokers were involved, they would not show you a house in neighborhoods where you were not welcome. And so maybe these covenants can now show us that where it existed for a racial aspect of it, it's very easy to suggest that not only were they wanted to keep out Black and brown people, they also wanted to keep out Jews and Asians.
Do you have any additional questions? I really appreciate the media. It's really hot out here, and you guys have a very tough job. But I want to thank everyone for coming. But this is not just the end. This is the beginning of a dialogue, a conversation. My niece, who has a Jewish father and a Black mother, asked me what's going on with people taking down those statues, and I really had to think about it before I answered her. And so this is our opportunity to control the dialogue, and I'm reminding everyone that if you're talking about race, please don't attack the person, attack the idea, and be kind to each other. And so a lot of people are going through a lot of tough times right now. Let's just remind each other to be kind to each other. I want to thank everyone here for coming here today. I apologize if I missed anyone. And thank you very much. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.